Oh my goodness. This is, I just want to say, the last time I was here was in March of this year. Show of hands, who was here in March when we initially presented on this measure, which was an idea then, and now it's real. By the way, after that meeting, I actually changed my voter registration to libertarian. So thank you all for being such an inspiration. My name is Kevin Mathews. I'm the co-chief petitioner of the Natural Medicine Health Act, along with my colleague Lightning Horse. I'm also the coalition director for Natural Medicine Colorado. And I'm going to hand the mic over to Veronica to introduce herself as well.
Thank you, Kevin. Yes, co-chief proponent of the Natural Medicine Health Act of Colorado. Veronica Lightning Horse. I'm fairly new to this world. I started my psychedelic journey 10 years ago in a beautiful peyote ceremony where I got my name. Been working on this and evolving and learning and growing, and ultimately this is such a beautiful thing for me to stand in this room full of people with eyes wide open who are learning and are growing and who have voices and are not afraid to speak up and stand their ground, and that is just an incredible thing today. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Bee. So we've had a long journey the past 16 months at this point. We started advocating on this measure back in the summer of 2021. I remember the first meeting that we had, I want to say it was June 6th, 2021. And so this measure, the Natural Medicine Health Act, has been in our community in conversation now for almost a year and a half. And now we're at the point where Coloradans have the opportunity to weigh in less than 3 weeks. Show of hands who got their ballots in the mail today or yesterday. They went out yesterday. Awesome. So Proposition 122, it is on the ballot. Read your blue book. Make your smoothie, shake your drink. And it's nice to take a big breath of fresh air. Can we actually do that together right now? Can we take like 3 or 4 deep breaths together? So bear with me for a second. You're all seated. Find yourself in a comfortable seated position. So root yourself, that crown chakra, that pelvis. Just land in your seat for a second and close your eyes. You're invited to close your eyes and breathe normally for now. We're going to do 6 deep breaths together because according to the science, 6 deep breaths activates your parasympathetic nervous system. And I need that to relax a little bit. Your eyes are closed. You're breathing normally. And we're going to do 6 deep breaths. It's going to sound like this. In through your nose. Deep into your belly. And then out through your mouth like you're blowing out a candle. So we'll start with that. Breath number 1, into the nose. Deep into your belly, into the nose. Three more. Last one, make it deep, into the nose, deep into your belly. Blow it out. And just sit there for a second and breathe normally now. Thank you all so much for joining us on this micro experience. So I would invite all of you to consider, you can open your eyes as well. I would invite all of you to consider that in less than 3 weeks, we all have an opportunity as voters and residents of this state to create something new, to create something that allows Coloradans an opportunity to legally use medicines that have been used for thousands of years by cultures all over the world for healing purposes, for transformation, for insight, to expand beyond our limited perception of our own self and find a little bit more truth and a little bit more reality in our experience. We have so much going on in the world right now that it's a real honor and pleasure for me to be here, especially standing next to this very...
Queen?
Thank you. This queen, this woman here who's been such a mentor for me the past year and a half, who I would not be here without. And I'm going to keep this short because I can go on a soapbox. What I'm going to do tonight is share like the specifics. I'm going to wear the policy hat and the politician hat per se for this campaign. I've been working in this space now for just about 5 years and have been working on policy reform and have been listening to a lot of people, a lot of individuals, a lot of, we can say, angels and demons who are very aligned with this work in a lot of ways, a lot of humans. For me, my personal experience has been this whole thing of electoral state politics is something that so many folks in our community don't know a lot about. And we've had the opportunity to get some tremendous insight into this process. And so here we are, where we have this chance to vote. And I'm going to hand the mic over very soon. So here's the 30,000-foot overview of the Natural Medicine Health Act, okay? So the Natural Medicine Health Act of 2022. What we're creating here in the state of Colorado is an opportunity for Coloradans who are 21 years of age and older to access natural medicine services. We're defining natural medicines as DMT, or dimethyltryptamine, ibogaine, mescaline, not including peyote, psilocybin, and psilocin. So individuals over 21 years old will be able to access these services at state-regulated and licensed healing centers. Also approved healthcare locations like palliative care, hospice, and addiction treatment centers, and in some cases in the comfort and safety of their own home where travel isn't possible. And folks would be able to receive these services from state-trained and licensed natural medicine facilitators. Now, we're also removing criminal penalties, which means it will become lawful for adults over 21 in the state of Colorado to use, possess, cultivate, transport, transfer, propagate, and share natural medicines with other adults over 21 years old in the state of Colorado. Now, thank you. Additionally, under our personal use and decriminalization component, we're making it possible for individuals who have pled guilty or received a conviction or completed a sentence for anything that would become lawful under this measure to have their records sealed at no cost to them. So individuals can petition the courts and they can have their records sealed. Also under personal use, because this is the lovely individuals and humans that I want to share this with, is that those of you who are currently offering underground services, if you're an underground practitioner, if you are a legacy practitioner, if you're a person who has been using this medicine and providing a service to your community, if you're offering bona fide harm reduction or therapeutic or other support services, you will be able to actually receive legal compensation for offering those services. I want to emphasize that retail and recreational sales are not allowed under this measure. Sharing is allowed. Gifting is allowed. That means that a person cannot still, so that means that a person is still prohibited from selling this medicine. So what does that mean? At the end of the day, that means nothing changes, except for the fact that if you are offering bona fide harm reduction services, you can receive legal compensation outside of the regulatory program. Quick timeline, and then I'll get off the mic. This vote's in less than 3 weeks, so November 8th, 2022. If this measure passes, it'll be ratified by the governor 2 weeks later. In that moment, dimethyltryptamine, ibogaine, mescaline, not including peyote, psilocybin, and psilocin, will be decriminalized across the state of Colorado for folks over 21. And then that initiates essentially a 22-month implementation process. So the first step there is that the governor needs to appoint a 15-member advisory board. That board's responsibility is to essentially create and recommend all of the rules and regulations that the Department of Regulatory Agencies needs to implement for this measure. So by the end of September 2024 is when the state needs to start accepting applications for licenses for healing centers and licensing for state facilitators. In addition to that, we're only starting with psilocybin for the regulated program. All these medicines will be decriminalized. In terms of regulated access, we're starting with psilocybin and psilocin. The deadline for the state to further regulate DMT, ibogaine, and mescaline, not including peyote, is June 1st, 2026. And so what we've created here is what we believe is the most compassionate and thoughtful model that combines both regulated access and community healing. Because everyone deserves access to these medicines. And some people want to use them in their own way. A lot of people want to use them in a safe, structured setting. And we're here today to share about why this work is so incredibly important, especially for the people of Colorado, and especially since we're facing a mental health crisis in the state and a veteran suicide crisis here in this state. So these medicines make it possible for folks to access a new treatment option for hope and healing, and to get on that path towards not only healing, but also integration. And I'll stop there.
Kevin Mathews, everybody. This has definitely been a labor of love for quite a few people. We have taken into account a lot of things. Something cool that we did with this legislation that really isn't done is we opened it to community. So there were so many community comments and ideas and red marks and additions that it was absolutely incredible. And I'm at the point where I can't even differentiate what came from who. And it evolved into something beautiful. There can be opposition and conflict because there's a lot of different ideas, but that's also where true creativity can come to the surface. And there are things in this measure that I would have never even thought to consider. Like, this can't be taken into, your psychedelic use can't be taken into consideration if you're fighting a custody battle. If you're waiting for an organ transplant, this can't be taken into consideration. This can't be taken into consideration if you're on parole or probation. There are a lot of protections in this that we really thought about, down to it's a tiered model. So if you're a psychiatrist or a psychologist or a legacy holder or somebody who's been doing this work for the past 10, 15, 20 years, you're not going to come in at an entry-level training program if you decide to get licensed and have to start out with the people that are fresh out of college with a psychology degree. You know, it's taking into account where it is. What I like about this measure is we went through a lot of trouble and a lot of work to try to meet as many people where they are. We are a slew at this point in time. There are so many people of mixed indigenous ancestry. There are so many people with different beliefs, different values, different ideologies, coming from different places, fighting different traumas, wanting to heal for different reasons. And that's a lot to take into account. And I'm really looking at a world that we can really start to work on. You don't have to be wrong in order for me to be right, and I don't have to be right in order for you to be wrong, or vice versa. We don't have to have that. We can sit in a place where we can all be right. We can have our own truths. To me, this model allows those who want to sit with a licensed practitioner, because that's where they feel safe, that's where they want to be. Here you go, here's your regulations. If you want to work in that healing center and not on your own and have the additional protections, here you go, you can do that. If you want to sit with a shaman, if you want to sit with somebody who is going the direction of old cultures, deep wisdom cultures, you should be allowed to do that without fear. And one thing I would really like to ask of everybody, since I do have the mic, so I get to ask, is we have a lot of talk about protecting indigenous wisdom and these medicines. And that is important. But I want people to approach that not from a position of shame or anger or hurt, but simply a position of, hey guys, there was a lot of people who didn't realize that there was a reason behind what a lot of people were doing. They didn't know what this is. This looks like crazy town, what these people are doing. We get scared of things that look like crazy town, that we don't understand. And that's everybody. Look at high schools, for crying out loud. That's different. I'm going to attack it. Very much human nature. And now we're in a place where culture and society is finally beginning to mature, that we're able to look at these medicines like sage, like osha, like ayahuasca and psilocybin, and say, wow, there's value here. These people knew what they were talking about. And to be able to offer from a heart-centered position, we didn't know what we didn't know. We're sorry. We recognize now the power of what you have kept sacred and what you have kept safe. We're at a place now where we can integrate this and a lot of different customs back into society, which is a beautiful thing. Everyone is going to have respect for things in a different way. A simple setting of intention when you take your microdose, to hold that in your hand and say, thank you. To say thank you for the peace, the healing that you can bring me, to the medicine itself. Thank you for the ancients that had this wisdom and kept this wisdom alive. And yes, thank you to the scientists who brought that extra, hey, guess what? It works. Look, it's neurological. We like it. That's important. But can we do that in a place of, yes, this is beautiful and we're finally here, opposed to the place of, should have known better, shame on you. And I really think we can do that if we bring it to this place here, which is what the medicine teaches us. I'm sure we've all done a journey, and many of those journeys are like, oh my God, let me go. Followed by, oh, thank you for the wisdom. I get it now. Thank you. We have an opportunity to create a lot of change, and there is a lot of work before us, including education, and letting people know. There's a lot of curiosity. In order to circumvent that curiosity, having education. Everyone in this room can go talk to people who are curious, to say, hey, let me give you a little bit more information. Hey, to go to this org. Hey, go to this resource. There's one favorite thing that I like to do when I get the mic. Does anybody know what medication is contraindicated with psilocybin? Lithium. Yeah.
So you should not take lithium. You should not eat mushrooms if you take lithium. It could potentially kill you. That's the one medication, the one Western medication you should absolutely never do. So if you serve psilocybin in a journey, you need to be aware of what medications your clients are on.
Yeah, screening process.
If lithium is one of them, you should decline. It is not safe. It is not safe.
It's okay with cocaine though?
3 days.
3 days with cocaine for the recording. Yeah. See, we got to learn something, and then we can go share that, and that keeps how many people safe. We have no idea the ripples that we're going to create. No idea the ripples we're going to create. Somebody made, I don't know who made that freedom sticker. It's freaking awesome, because that is what it's about. It's my mental health. It's my personal sovereignty. This is how I want to heal. And with a measure like this, I get some choice in that. And that's beautiful. That's beautiful to me. So thank you very much for listening to me and being open. I appreciate that very much.
Love you, V.
Back to Kevin.
So yeah, we're totally, we have time for Q&A. Josh, how much time do we have for Q&A? What are we looking at?
First question.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm like, wait. Okay, so I have a few questions. Oh, it's not on. Hello?
Test. 1 second.
I can be very.
I can hear you, but the mic can't hear you.
Grab that one.
Yep.
Test.
Test.
So I have a few questions. Really quick around, I love that you guys are starting out with psilocybin. First and foremost. My questions are going to be more around DMT. In the state of Colorado, it is currently illegal to work with 5-MeO. And so the lineage medicine that I work with is a combination that does consist of 3 different strains of DMT. 5-MeO is one of them. Is this something that is going to potentially cover these different strains of DMT, or is it just going to be the synthetic version of DMT?
5-methoxy dimethyltryptamine is included in the definition of dimethyltryptamine.
Okay.
So dimethyltryptamine would be decriminalized upon passage of this measure and ratification.
Okay.
And what I want to include is that the way that so this is helpful for everyone, the way that we defined natural medicines, first of all, we define them according to how the state defines them. So the state defines DMT, dimethyltryptamine, and ibogaine, and mescaline, not including peyote. Peyote is actually separate, it has its own provision, psilocybin and psilocin. We define them as any container that would cause such plant or fungus to be described in the criminal code, which includes any container, whether it's a mushroom or a plant that has those alkaloids in them.
Beautiful. I really appreciate that. And the next question is, this is obviously going to be on a state level versus a federal level. So how is that going to be with the DEA? Yes, I walk in many medicine circles.
That's great. No, that's a wonderful question. Thank you. I'm not sure if you... Okay, so the only precedent we have to compare this with is Oregon. I think, show of hands, 2020 Psilocybin Services Act. Who's heard of that? Okay, so Oregon legalized the adult use of psilocybin at service centers in the state of Oregon in 2020. The DEA has not intervened there. I can't answer that question very well because I can't speak for the federal government. I think, thankfully, considering the 20 years of research, that the Biden administration is hinting towards rescheduling. Is that right? Considering the research with the FDA right now, and that's the reason. Like we designed so much of this measure after the research. So if we're talking about therapeutic access, which we are at healing centers, it's based off of a lot of the insight and the research that we've learned from the last 20 years from universities like Johns Hopkins, NYU. And we're also obviously very much acknowledging the thousands of years of cultural use with these medicines. So I can't speak to the DEA. I can speak personally, though. on camera right there, I would say that it'd be a big mistake for the DEA to try and come in and mess with this. Yeah.
Hi, I'm back here. My name is Mike Chappelle. I'm reading a book right now. It's called Poisoner in Chief. It's about MK Ultra and the CIA, and I would recommend anyone interested in any of this type of healing to know about, because you pretty much anything you think of in this regard, the CIA and the state are going to be all over it. So it's just a word of caution. I would not let anybody in my mind or my healing process that I did not know very, very well for a long, long time. And so my question is, I'm all for legalizing this stuff. And how about if you just flat out legalize everything and let everybody make their own decisions about whether they want to use it or not?
I mean, so we have to work with the system that currently exists, right? At this level, we do. Yes, we do. And so, I can't directly answer that. I feel like that we're doing what we can right now to work with the laws that are here and the systems that are in place to make these medicines accessible to people in a way, again, that's based on the research, that's safe and compassionate and we know is effective, that has research backed by it from the federal government. According to the research, yeah. Combined with therapy, it's safe and effective, right, for psilocybin and psilocin and other medicines. To your point, we can talk about how these medicines were originally criminalized over 50 years ago and the cultural revolution that catalyzed that criminalization. And I think that's a conversation for another time when we're not on camera and being recorded. So I'm happy to do that too.
They should be treated like tomato plants, and we shouldn't have to ask permission to use something that we have a God-given right to use.
Well, I agree. I think that if you can poison yourself legally, you should be able to medicate yourself legally. I really believe that. I mean, here we are surrounding ourselves with a lot of different things. So anyway, one of the integration with the Right to Try Act that was instilled with the previous tyrannical agency. I think that it might be a possibility for these natural medicines to coincide with that, in the older generation, so we say, and people that are trying to work through their final years and being able to, with some help and assistance. That's one of the things that I would like to talk about is the Right to Try Act along with these things. So how does it correlate with the Right to Try Act? How does the new legislation that you're promoting correlate with the Right to Try Act? I think that would be a better way to do that. It's hard to do this on mushrooms, so go ahead. If you don't mind, I came prepared for the meeting. I got the notes.
Hey, thank you, Rodney. It's a great question. So if anything, our measure complements Colorado's Right to Try Act. Show of hands who's familiar with Right to Try in Colorado. Okay, so what Right to Try means, for those who aren't familiar, is that individuals who are facing an end-of-life illness, and they've tried everything they can to find relief. What Right to Try allows for is for individuals to use any kind of substances that have already passed a phase 1 clinical trial. Colorado was the first state to make that possible for people. And one of our messengers, this individual, his name's Alan. He's on our website, Alan Floyd. He has stage 4 cancer. He's terminal. He's riddled with tumors up and down his spine, all throughout his body, in his brain. He's been featured on CNN and other publications multiple times. working with his psychiatrist, he utilized the right to try law here. And because of the incredible success that he's seen from working with psilocybin mushrooms in particular, even his doctors are using him with his permission as a case study for how tremendous these medicines can be. So I think, if anything, the Natural Medicine Health Act, Proposition 122, will only complement right to try, and especially in cases where individuals are under palliative care, they're under hospice, where they would be able to work with somebody who can facilitate this experience for them, where they may not normally have access to it.
My mic is dead. I don't know how to work it, maybe. User error. To your point, that's incredibly important, and also why we need those training programs. Because if you're working with somebody in palliative care that is on medications, that has heart failure, that has something else that's going on, stage 4 cancer, the person that is working with them and administering the psilocybin needs to have training on how the machines work, how to work the blood pressure cuff, even some of those simple things like that. But there's so much monitoring that needs to go in there, because the whole purpose of doing that medicine is to help ease them. We have all these systems that take care of the physical pain of somebody going through something like that, but not the emotional or psychological pain. We know this helps that, but not everybody is qualified to be sitting with somebody using powerful medications like that when they're in that condition.
I'm curious about, you haven't talked about law enforcement besides DEA. Are they prepared for this? Are people going to get shot? Is there an education program to help educate the local law enforcement?
Yeah, thank you for that question. That's really important. Okay, so first, I'll answer it in 2 parts. Okay, so the first part is that if we consider what happened in Denver in 2019. So who's in Denver? Raise your hands, like Denver proper, city and county in Denver. How many of you voted on the Denver Psilocybin Initiative, Initiative 301? Okay, cool. I'm not going to ask if you voted yes or no. So thank you for voting on that. I work with Denver's DA and city attorneys, law enforcement, healthcare professionals, et cetera, on the Denver Psilocybin Mushroom Policy Review Panel, the DPMPRP. It's not easier to say it that way either. What this panel unanimously concluded back in the spring of 2021 and then reported to the Denver City Council in the fall of 2021 is that deprioritizing or decriminalizing psilocybin mushrooms in the city and county of Denver has not had any significant public health or safety issue that occurred. And we were able to make that conclusion based on enforcement data, based on emergency room data, and based on use observational studies that are looking at use outside of clinical settings. So what we know for sure is, one, that deprioritizing psilocybin in Denver the sky didn't fall. Nothing changed. Even enforcement didn't really change. Arrests for psilocybin in Denver account for approximately 1% of total arrests related to drug arrests. And then, if I'm remembering correctly, over 3/4 of those arrests for psilocybin also included other illicit substances like cocaine, heroin, methamphetamines, fentanyl, etc. The enforcement data nationwide is that psilocybin arrests account for approximately 0.5 percentage point for all drug arrests. So I'm sharing all of this because we know that enforcement and arrests related to psilocybin are very low, which in my opinion indicates that most people who are already using these medicines, because they are, and they're in our communities now, there is this very strong, very robust underground community using these medicines, that they're doing so responsibly. So in terms of, your question was, is state law enforcement ready for this? Personally, I don't think it's going to make a difference. if this passes, we're not going to see more arrests related to psilocybin mushrooms in particular or other natural medicines. What we do know is that most adults who use these medicines are doing so responsibly, in an informed way, in very intentionally curated settings to maximize their healing potential.
Is there an amount that you can carry with and still get arrested for, like when cannabis was legalized?
No. No is the answer. Yeah. So we did not set a specific enumerated limit for the amount a person can possess these medicines. So I'll repeat the question because it was on the mic. The question was, is there a specific amount or up to an amount that a person can have in their possession before an arrest is made? Okay, that's a great question. Thank you. So we did not set a specific amount for possession. We did that for a lot of reasons, because these are natural medicines and we have a civil liberty and an individual right to use these God-given plants and fungi for healing. What we learned in Denver and decided in Denver, because this question came up initially in Denver back in the fall of 2021 or late winter, late fall, early winter. We did not want to set limits on personal use and possession in Denver because we decided that we wanted to wait and see what the data said. And the data said that we're okay. Can't have 5 pounds of mushrooms in your car, So here's the thing with our measure. And Rodney, it's a good point you bring that up, my friend. Here's what the measure says. There's no specific limit. A person can cultivate, use, possess an amount. They can also share an amount as well. What this measure does specifically, that's in the language, it's written down, it's going to become law if this passes, is that law enforcement may not confiscate, harm, seize, or destroy these medicines. The simple possession of any amount of natural medicines is not enough cause or justification to make an arrest. Law enforcement needs to have proof that a person is selling these medicines for remuneration. Remuneration is a fancy legal term for basically profit. Again, which is why I say that no retail or recreational sales are allowed with this measure. Now, I will say that a person needs to have a pretty good justification for having 5 pounds of mushrooms in their car. Okay? Fine. Whatever that is, Rodney. And so what I'm saying is, because we're allowing for gifting and sharing, law enforcement will have discretion in some cases where that individual who has a very large amount of mushrooms could say, look, this is my 6-month supply for the community that I'm serving with these medicines. And beyond that, law enforcement cannot make an arrest.
Well, if we're going into common law.
Next question, Brandon. Well, first off, thank you both very much. Thank you for your hard work to get this on the ballot. And thank you for your courage, too, to put yourselves out there, put skin in the game and be the voices and the faces of this movement and this initiative. I know it's not easy, to put yourselves out there like that. So thank you so much for everything that you've been doing. My question is, what advice do you have? What have you learned through this process, through this last 16, 18 months, for people who want to maybe engage in the community politically, kind of doing what you're doing? What lessons can you pass on to us who can maybe help you or help municipalities or kind of keep this fight continuing? What advice can you give us?
Stop judging each other. My God, let people be. Everybody's where they're at, and also a very keen awareness and acceptance that if you're doing something new, you're going to take flack for it. If you're making people uncomfortable, you're going to take flack for it. We're dealing with something that has been programmed into our little brains since Dare to Get Off Drugs with the scary little mushroom pack and the little black suitcase, that this is bad, it'll drive you crazy, don't do it, you'll break your mother's heart. It's in there. And a lot of people, it's really deep in there. And to have some compassion with, hey, I got the same message. I decided that I was willing to do what it takes to get out of my pain and my suffering and trauma, and I tried this and it works, and I was educated. I did some research. Hey, just in case, here's the Fireside Project. Hey, just in case, if you're a first-time user, have a sitter, man. It's new. Protect yourself. Be smart. You know, things like this I think is very important, but anytime you're doing anything that's going to create some change and is in the opposition of the, dare I say it, matrix programming, you're going to catch some flack for it. So relying on like that deep inner truth, what you have learned from the medicines and what the medicines have told you personally, and staying strong in your own truth, gives you the ability to allow others to have theirs and continue to move forward. But it's a hell of a lot of compassion cultivated, for sure.
Thank you for the question. And the best piece of advice that I was recently given is you think how you breathe. You think how you breathe. How many of you breathe deeply? How many of you breathe shallowly? Okay, so there's a lot that I can share about the process over the last 18 months, and a lot that I've learned in my own experience with this, especially having so much of my own shadows come to the surface for, if not resolution, at the very least, to shine a little light on them and say, hey, here I am. You can do a little bit better over here, you douchebag. Like, communicate a little bit better over here. And I think for me, what it comes down to is really just like, how am I breathing? Deep breath. I drop the shoulders too, like, you know, this is my first foray into electoral politics at this level. I didn't realize how much to combine the word psychedelic with politics. It initially freaked me out until I understood that everything we do as humans is political, and everything we do as humans is also mind manifesting. And I think, like, if we look at a coin, there's two sides of a coin. There's the heads and the tails. There's actually three sides. There's the edge as well. So if we can walk the edge and know where our values are and not compromise on those and play the game and have faith and trust in the process and allow this medicine to actually direct the process, which it's actually doing. For those who aren't paying attention, the medicine is leading this entire thing. I think for me, it's just taking one step at a time in faith every day and relying on the people that I love. And we have a lot more work to do, especially if this passes.
Okay, so my question actually, I think this feeds perfectly into walking the edge and playing the game. So for those practitioners who are currently practicing and would like to continue practicing in the future, providing their services to the community, does this allow for them to charge for their services and share the medicine that they have available to them?
Individuals who are legacy practitioners who have been working underground no longer have to fear working underground. They can receive legal compensation for their bona fide harm reduction, therapeutic, or other support services. And that's pretty broad, as long as they're not selling the actual medicine itself.
but they are providing it and sharing it.
Yes, they can provide and share it as a part of. They're not being. Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
perfect. I just wanted to make sure that was very clear. Thank you.
You're welcome.
They're paying for the service, not for the medicine.
They're paying for the service, not for the medicine. The medicine is the gift. The service is to be paid for. Thank you, Tess.
Real quick, as far as the sacredness of this medicine anyway, selling these little people, offering them as gifts, offering them as, hey, this is how you do it, harm reduction. Hey, is this your first time you got a sitter? That little piece of wisdom that comes with it is very important because you're selling your skill. You're selling your space that you created, not the little people.
As someone who offers a safe space for this, I don't want to have to ask permission and file a mountain of paperwork in order to be considered a legal place that is able to do it. Can I use common law language and submit a notice that I am doing this?
That's a question for our attorneys or your attorney.
Okay. I mean, yeah, cool.
Yeah, but like, okay. A lot of them do though.
Okay. Just to piggyback off of the lineage, being lineage carers of medicine, myself and a few others who practice here underground, if you will, in the state of Colorado, we do financially support these lineages by paying them finances to continue to create the medicine and support the lineage. Is that against all of this, or is that also covered underneath this? Is there a loophole that could potentially cause some type of friction from buying it from the lineage? And then, because for the medicine that I work with, you have to study. You have to be invited into that space to even touch the medicine. It is not something that you can go around and just sell or gift. It is 100%. You have to be chosen in that. But in order to receive that medicine as well too, we give that offering of, okay, here's a way for us to support your community as you continue as well. But it comes off as we're buying the medicine to supply whatever it is that you need to continue to create it.
To clarify, is the question if you are allowed to compensate organizations that are offering services and producing this medicine?
I wouldn't even call it an organization, like
Individuals.
Yeah, individuals. Most
Teachers,
of
healers.
teachers that are outside of the United States, first and foremost. How does that, like, obviously we can't sell. Like, I'm not going to go and sell psilocybin and this kind of thing to someone, but how does that reverse? How does that role reverse to where we buy it from the elders, we buy it from the lineage kind of deal?
So this is what I had a lawyer tell me. Is it possible for you to pay for their housing and they send this to you as a gift?
Hey, one question. Two questions, I guess, and I feel fairly ignorant about most of what we've been hearing. You mentioned peyote is not part of this, and nobody's mentioned LSD. Can you just go into, like, really briefly, like, why are neither of those part of this?
Peyote is now an endangered species. And the majority of the peyote fields in South America are under cartel control. So there is only X amount of plants, and peyote is the cornerstone. It's not just a sacred ceremony, it is the cornerstone of many Native American faiths. So that being said, when we were asked by the Native American Church and multiple voices in the Colorado indigenous communities to leave peyote out, I mean, we've got our hands full with the other medicines, so that is absolutely something we can respect. As far as LSD, that is still a visceral for many, many people, and it's a synthetic. And we went for, let's work and let's begin with naturally occurring psychedelics. We've got our work cut out with that, so let's begin with that. We can continue to grow and expand.
Hi. I just have a quick clarification question because this is all very new to me. So ultimately what this would say if this passes is that, for example, I as an individual could grow something in my backyard and either share it with a government certified service who would then distribute to people who want to experiment, or I myself could do it for myself and share it with my neighbor. Is that what the two pathways are?
So some of that, who is growing for the healing centers, will be decided by the advisory board during the regulatory process. As far as growing it in your backyard or growing it in wherever it is that you're growing it, you need to make sure that it is not accessible by children. Your medicine is kept under lock and key, and you can absolutely share it with your friends, your neighbors, your relatives within Colorado, because this is going to be decriminalized within Colorado. So if you're looking at shipping it out of state or something like that as a gift, those lines are going to be other states' laws. So it does need to stay in Colorado.
So to follow up for the clarification, it's similar to marijuana then, that you can grow it and consume it for yourself, or you have to go through a government institution that's going to define how those products, how those medicines can be grown and given to the practitioners. Is that
If you're
right?
wanting to provide for a healing center.
Right. That's
Yeah.
where I'm getting at, is where are the healing centers going to get their medicine from? Like, who dictates that, and how is that captured? Like, do they have to grow it themselves, or are they ultimately going to be able to get it from somewhere through some new process you guys are promoting?
Some of that is going to be decided by when this passes with the regulatory agencies. My understanding, correct me if I'm wrong and strike it from the video, is that a healing center, if you're growing mushrooms for a healing center, that in and of itself is considered a healing center. So 5 healing centers is what an individual can have, because we are very aware of what happened in the cannabis industry, and we're doing as much as we can to circumvent that monopolization and that taking over and the big entities coming in and having 50 centers, and they're the only ones that can afford this. We're really looking at making this equitable, that it can't be tons of fees. It can't be more than what it's costing to get it up and off the ground. There is always going to be concern. I mean, button mushrooms are regulated. Just about everything that ends up in your grocery store is regulated to some extent. So there is going to be that awareness that when you're providing for the public like that, then there is going to be we are going to look at sanitation and conditions and things like that, just like everything else that comes to your table. All right? Okay.
Okay, this is less of a question and more of an observation, which is that I'm listening to all the questions you guys are receiving, and I agree with all of them that it should not be regulated by the state. It should not be controlled by the state. And but at the same time, there's the old colloquialism, don't let the good be the enemy of the great. And what you two are working toward is absolute good, and I hope that we get you to the absolute good and then get to the great later.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, for just like a regular drug user, kind of like recreational drug user, who does it outside of medicational purposes just because you like to hunt ducks with a pitchfork every now and then, how does this affect us? You know, I do understand the medicine, because marijuana did similar things, and we ended up with a dichotomy of citizens. We ended up with people who are running out of medical strains, and they end up in recreational dispensaries just to try to maintain. But then again, it becomes really hard on just the recreational user who wants to do a cycle dose of 3 grams of Monster Max with some peanuts in me, a little bit LSD, and maybe a line of cocaine.
Yeah.
Is that no? But I'm saying, you know, isn't it when you separate the community basing upon medicine, which is, I love the fact that we're all working on our higher selves, but there's some of us who are just lowlifes and who like to get high, you know, and how does that separate us out from, you know, because we're not necessarily medical people. We're not going to sit down and powwow. We're gonna do a couple of grams and we're gonna fire.
So
it
you're
up.
self-medicating.
consider myself medicated. Yeah.
you're
So you're
self-medicating.
saying every use is medicated use no matter what.
Where are you gonna? What is your intention behind it? Because
What is my
this is
intent?
this is where I'm getting at. Whose individual truth? I'm self-medicating.
Mm-hmm.
Me sitting next to the fire and having some grams with some friends. I'm not doing this in the schoolyard or the park and ooh, look at the pretty colors.
But I
everybody.
am.
Okay, well then be careful. That's
I
something to
am.
be careful about because whether this legislation passes or not,
Yeah, see, that's what
is
I'm
gonna
saying. So the
freak people
legislation
out.
passes, and everybody who's dealing with Haley and Amber over here, they're really fucking cool, you know. But here I am cruising down Colfax. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm all happy and shit, and then they pull me over and they say, "Are you doing this for medical purposes?" I'm gonna say, "No, you can't have my ID." You know. I won't be-
Okay, well, do me a favor and stay out of schoolyards.
Okay, fair enough.
Two more questions.
So I don't want to fast forward too much, but so what's next? So when this passes in 3 weeks, what's the next ballot initiative that we can expect?
Listen, we have a lot of work to do in Colorado. Like if this passes in 3 weeks, there's. Thank you. Thank you. When this passes in 3 weeks, Taz. I got my campaign manager in my head who's very superstitious. But I'm also superstitious because I like to manifest things, and that's why I'm here right now. So, I mean, like, listen, what's next is that we have to steward this well. We need to make sure that the folks on the advisory board are qualified. And we need to make sure that whatever state legislators are involved with this are here to support this. We have to appropriate funds for this to get the program off the ground. And like, there's 3 things that we have to do in the state initially. One, it's to create educational programs and public service announcements. That's number 1. Number 2 is it's actually advisory board and public service announcements. And the most critical thing, the 3rd thing, is defining what we mean in this measure by equitable access. If we're talking about like reduced costs for licensing fees or reduced costs for access to these services, if you're a member of a marginalized community, we have to define those things to make sure that these medicines are actually reaching people who likely need them the most, which I'm comfortable saying in most cases that's folks who don't normally they normally face barriers to access to healthcare, right? So how do we make this and integrate this into our existing system in a way that makes sense and is fair for people and reduced costs? And that's a 22-month process, right? What we do know is that next year in at least half a dozen of other states, they're also considering different types of reform with these medicines. And I think we need to recognize that millions of people across the entire country right now support this work. 35% of American voters support access to psychedelics. 65% of American voters who suffer from mental and behavioral health issues want access to psychedelics. This is a national movement. And what are we doing? All of us who are involved in this work, whether we're here in Colorado or Oregon or California or Texas or Massachusetts or New York or New Jersey or Kentucky or Michigan or all these other states across this country, not to mention provinces in Canada and other places in North America and across the world, what are we doing to work together to make sure that people are educated so they understand how to use these medicines in a way that can maximize the, dare I say, healing and transformational potential? And then what happens next? That's a good question. What happens next? I don't know. This is like I said earlier, it's one step at a time. This is our next step. This electoral process is one part of a movement. Regardless of what happens on November 8th, this movement is here to stay, and we're strong. We're very strong. And there are so many people, not only here in Colorado, but across the entire country who support this kind of work. And it's really going to take all of us standing up together to agree on what we agree on and work together on what we agree on and allow the differences to be there for the sake of what we agree on to make sure that these medicines are liberated and normalized in Western culture.
So somehow I've convinced Josh to let me have the final question. So I'm going to ask this very important question 3 different ways so it's completely understood. Where is the money coming from? Is it taxpayer dollars? And what is the funding mechanism? So like what specific kind of taxpayer dollars, if so?
Okay, you're better at that one.
Okay. So this measure does not introduce a new tax. Right now, the money's coming from the state's general fund.
So taxes they've already collected, is that what you're saying?
Already collected in the state's general fund. People aren't. Do you have something more to add?
I just want to clarify that that's
Yeah,
stolen money.
so the initial monies that are going to be used to get this program off the ground, which includes appointing the advisory board and starting the process with the Department of Regulatory Agencies, will come from the state's general fund, which has to be repaid by the regulatory program over a period of 2 to 4 years. We don't
How
have
much?
a time frame. Initially, how much? It's going to be $3 to $5 million from the state general fund. So not that much.
That's our talk. Give it up for Kevin and Veronica.